Welcome to The Why. In our podcast, The Why, we're going to cover topics that are important to SAP customers and to our team. We want you to share this information internally. We want you to share this information outside of SAP Ariba. And we want you to be able to connect with other thought leaders in our business. This is our first podcast for The Why, and we've chosen a topic which we know is important to our customers, and that is transforming their supply chain. And today we're going to be talking with Val Blatt, who's going to bring some best practices that she sees across our customers and across our organization. Val, welcome to The Why.
Hey, thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Glad you're here today. So we see companies looking to digitize their supply chain with us. Why do you see companies, first of all, selecting SAP Ariba to do that?
I think the thing that gets us through the door being SAP Ariba really is our breadth of capabilities. So I think the first thing our customers see is really that we can digitize their supply base all the way from choosing suppliers to managing risks, then to their purchase orders, their invoices, and all the way to the payment. So I think that impresses customers, just how far we can go.
Right.
But in the sales cycles I've been in, what I think really pushes customers to choose Ariba is the expertise that we bring. So they can see that we've done this thousands of times before, and we can bring them best practices, the way they need to do things, the way they need to look at their digitization, and the way they need to look at their transformation. And I think that really helps us stand apart. And I think finally, honestly, people, whether they're in procurement or finance, they really want to see that procurement and finance are going somewhere. It's bigger than just what they're currently doing. And I think SAP Ariba has done a really nice job at defining, hashtag make procurement awesome, but some of our partnerships with things like Made in a Free World, people see a longer term vision of how SAP Ariba is really trying to transform procurement, and they want to be a part of that.
Great. So it sounds like they see that we know what to do.
Absolutely.
We may be ready to
Absolutely.
help them, and that's why they choose us. But do you think most of our customers are ready? When you start talking with them, are they ready to make this transition, them and their suppliers? Because it's not just about them, it's about their supply chain.
Well, I do think the commercial process is a little bit of the honeymoon. And I do think that just like any personal project, we recently did a home project where we redid our kitchen and a few of our rooms in our house. And I think you get the architect prints and you're really excited and you think this is going to be great because you, at that point, can see the end result. But when you start going through that process personally, it's frustrating because you didn't realize really what it took to make it successful. So I think our customers' transformations are no different than our own personal projects that we sometimes have to go through. And so I think customers don't necessarily realize all of the things that it takes to be successful at the beginning. But with our expertise and with the thousands of customer stories that we can bring, we get them there for sure. We do have some customers. We have one right now, which is a retail product customer, and who really went in with knowing all of those things because they've had failed projects in the past. So we partnered with them with marketing providers. We created, partnered on videos. We, went with their sponsor and visited their sites to talk about why we're doing this. Right. And at the end of the day, those are the kinds of things it takes to be successful. So you do get the customer that understands the beginning because they've been through that really frustrating project before.
Sure.
But most of them start with the honeymoon, and then
reality sets in.
Yeah, exactly.
So as you've worked with many of our customers, understand you and your team have put together some, we'll call it effective habits,
yes.
Right? Things you think that customers should follow, probably things we should make sure we understand in that honeymoon period.
That's right.
Right, and talk a little bit about with our customers. Can you tell us about what those effective habits are?
Sure. I'll try to go through them pretty quickly here, but I think, we do have 7 effective habits, and each of them, there's a number of things that hang off of them, but we try to make it an easy thing for our customers to follow, just the steps for people to understand. But number 1, obviously, is really understanding goals. So not just us understanding the customer goals, but the customer understanding that they actually have to create a strategy and goals.
Right. So they're knowing what the end should be.
Absolutely. So it's really hard to start a project and be successful if you don't really have the end in mind. And after those goals, that strategy, those objectives are created, really the next thing then is to figure out how do you communicate them. And there's a number of participants in that communication that have maybe a similar message but slightly different. So you think about your end users that are going to use the software, but also the thousands of suppliers that need to be connected when you're doing a network transformation. What is the message to them? And it's really important to them to understand the whys. Why is the customer, why is this important to them? And why are you looking to make the transformation? And then you have to talk about the what too, the timelines.
And sometimes the how.
And sometimes the how, exactly. And then next, I mean, and this is something that I think customers intrinsically know, but staffing, not just for the upfront project, but also for the perpetuity. So we often say transformation is, especially network transformation, is not a project, it's a process. So making sure you have kind of that upfront staffing defined, but also how are you going to manage your business long term.
Right, and is that because you see them having to make many process changes? They're going from something that was paper-based or something else, obviously, to the cloud?
That's right, exactly. And I think that when you're moving from paper-based to the cloud, you have to think about things like, okay, not all my, I'm going to choose new suppliers, so not all my suppliers are on this process, and how do I get them into the cloud moving forward? Or how do I actually manage suppliers that don't do what I ask them to do? There has to be a little bit of a stick and a little bit of a carrot.
Sure. Well, it's a relationship.
That's right, exactly. Next, we really start thinking about the suppliers and which suppliers are matched on the network, and which suppliers, what are our specific messages to those suppliers, which ones are going to see the value, and how do we really build that strategy up front to make sure the suppliers that are going to be easiest to get on the network, that we start with those. And it's kind of like you want early wins in any project, so you want to go after the low-hanging fruit. So you can really start to see momentum. Some customers, I've been in a couple customer meetings where they're like, we want to go into, and they name, some Uzbekistan first, because we want to prove that you can do this.
Right.
And I always say, listen, I'm always up for a challenge, but the reality is, for your own internal management and your own internal advertising, you want to go after something where you can show success. Not that we can't do it in Uzbekistan, but we're probably going to be more successful, say, in France or in the UK or in the United States, or somewhere where you're going to see a lot of value, and your end users are going to understand what we're trying to accomplish.
That makes sense. I would also assume that we want to guide a customer to the majority, right? The 80% of their transformation, not necessarily focused on the minor things as we get started.
Yeah, you got it. Next, we really think about, and this is something tactical but so important, which is accurate supplier details, data. And we say to our customers early in the sales cycle, do you know who your suppliers are? Some of them are honest and say, absolutely not. We don't have good data.
Scary.
We don't have good data, and it's not centralized, but a lot of them think that they do. And many times what we find is the truth is actually somewhere in the middle. Our customers have many records of their suppliers. They just are scattered in different places. So understanding who your suppliers are, making sure the data is accurate. It's kind of that thing where you want to do the process correct up front, so it sails through the rest more easily later.
Right.
And having correct supplier data is actually really important. Can be a long pole in the tent of issues moving forward in a project. And then, not lastly, but second to lastly, it's preparing the business and the suppliers for the new operational processes. And it goes along to what we talked about before, which was the communication. So early on, we've communicated the why to them. Now we have to start communicating to them that this is going to start happening. And what are the new behaviors? How do we train them? What are the the messages, what do the supply managers need to say to the suppliers that call them?
Sure. Yep.
What do the end users, if they can't find their supplier, what's the process that they need to go through? How do they use the solution?
Yep.
And so forth. And then finally, and we talked a little bit about this at the beginning as well, is just the continuous plan, the operational plan. How do you manage this going forward, since it is a business change in a business process?
Right. Now those habits sound like things that all of our customers should certainly look at.
Absolutely.
This podcast is the why,
Yeah.
and we close with the why. So for
Yeah.
today's why does our supplier management organization need to know these effective habits, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we exist to actually make both our supplier customers and our buyer customers successful. And these are, these 7 habits are things that we've learned from 15 years of doing this, that we can bring to our customers. When I was at Ariba Live in North America, I had one customer come up to me and mention an individual who had really been key to their project from our supplier enablement team. And they said, listen, we didn't know what we were getting into, but this person really challenged us along the way the whole time. So every time we wanted to do something, sometimes it wasn't smart. This person would basically tell us, you're gonna fail, or it's not gonna
Right.
work.
Right.
And so I think we need to be not just effective at laying out, the 7 steps, but effective at guiding our customers and challenging them, because they really see the value that we bring when we show them our expertise. And at the end of the day, sometimes challenging doesn't feel comfortable, but customer success does. So that's the why, John.
Great. Thank you very much, Val.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This edition of The Why focused on 7 effective habits, as you heard from Val. To find out more, contact Val or someone on her team. Val, thank you for sharing the why behind why our customers digitize their supply chain.
Thanks.
Our podcast, The Why, is put together by the SMO People First team. We'll be producing The Why on a regular basis. If you have recommendations for topics, please contact the People First team. And please share this podcast with other members of our team or even outside our team. Thank you for listening to The Why.